What up? What up, everybody? Welcome back to yet another Sound of Violence podcast. We are an MMA podcast to let you know the MMA podcast you should catch, skip, and can't miss. I am Pulver. I am back yet again with my co-host Chris Madaffer. How's it going, man?
Not too bad.
There you go.
Yeah.
Getting better?
Oh, yeah. Very, very excited for all three cards tomorrow. Not really, in case you could tell.
I was gonna say I have mixed emotions about the three cards tomorrow.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to be able to watch all three, but I definitely have an idea of it's going to be just kind of hand-picked fights, I guess. Kind of what I want to try to catch, realistically. So we'll see.
Yeah. I feel the same way. I think there will be some hella fun stuff going on, but we'll see how it actually ends up turning out in practice versus in reality. So why don't we start off with our Papa Vodka presents Doug Stanhope presents our sponsors, which before we do, the fuck have you been looking at Doug Stanhope's content lately on Twitter and listening to his podcast? Because that motherfucker is 2 days sober, 2 days off cigarettes, and he's jogging like a couple miles a day.
Okay.
The world might be ending. I'm not positive, but it's starting to feel that way.
Yeah, I can't really picture him doing that. So
no, I'll tell you, there's pictures of it, and you still can't picture it. It's very weird. It feels like a fever dream.
How old is that guy? Like in his mid-50s? I have no idea.
It's got to be something like that. But he met this chick, Catherine Bertine, and has been going around. This is by the way, I guess this should be one of our well-rounded shows, but it isn't. But he met some chick who's a cyclist, and they're both writing. He's working on a book. She's working on something else. And so she's like getting him on a health kick, and it's fucking scaring me, bro. We might have to change the name of our intro.
Yeah, right. What we're going to be doing next is drinking some mystery green juice shit.
Right? That's right. Yeah. We'll be fucking juicing, brah.
Or we'll have to be just drinking hard kombucha.
I'm glad there was a second part. There was a second syllable to that word because I got real scared for a second.
Yeah.
All right. Well, on that note, what are you drinking on this week?
I got this at Vaughn's. It was pretty affordable as far as craft beer goes. It's Figueroa Mountain. Never heard of them.
Yeah, that's one of those. I think that's one of those beer companies that's owned by somebody. Like Budweiser or Coors or somebody.
It's a blonde ale. It tastes more like it has this sweet, like after mouthfeel of like a blonde ale, but it just kind of tastes like PBR. I don't know.
That totally checks out, and I swear that's owned by somebody. I bet I don't know, because it's just does that say it's made by Figueroa Brewing Company and it's located in like one of the cities where there is a Budweiser plant?
Brewed and canned in Buellton, California by Fig Mountain Brew.
Man, I hope I'm not just like defaming these dudes, because I see them around all the time, but I always
2010.
Maybe they are just an actual. Shouts out to Gillespie Field, by the way, which is
it's definitely a crushable beer. It's just there's just better blonde ales out there.
Yeah, no, you know what? They might just be like a legit actual brewery. I don't see them being owned by somebody. Well, that's cool.
Yeah, I think they're like based in LA County or some shit. I think on the thing it showed like a map, and there's like San Luis Obispo.
They have one in.
This literally is the 101, so that kind of fucking tells you.
Yeah, they literally have breweries up the 101, Santa Barbara, Oxnard. So maybe they. I don't think they are owned by anybody. Anyway, I guess it doesn't really matter. But yeah, you said it's just pretty generic.
It's not bad. It's just not great. I don't know. It's drinkable though.
Well, that's good.
Wouldn't be mad if someone gave me one.
There you go. So this week I am drinking Joe Friday from Concrete Jungle. It's a solid hazy. However, I'm going to go ahead and put this up. I don't know if it'll show. That's not that hazy. It's definitely got a haze to it. but like I can see right through that motherfucker. It looks hazier on stream, but it's definitely no milkshake. But it tastes great. They were selling at Preferred Liquors, shouts out, in Santee. They were selling a variety 4-packs. It's like, I think it's a hazy IPA, a West Coast IPA, some kind of goes, and a like a lager or a pilsner. I think it was a pilsner.
Maybe like a Kolsch or some shit.
I think it was a pilsner, but for fucking whatever it was, $15 for 4 16-ounce cans. That's not terrible.
Yeah, it doesn't sound too bad at all.
Yeah, it's not like crazy remarkable hazy, but totally passable. It's better than some of the ones I've had from the bigger breweries. So,
yep.
Cool, man. Well, since we're not a beer show, despite my best efforts every goddamn week, eventually we'll be a beer show. Eventually. But I don't want to infringe on Flying Brian's gimmick because he actually works at a brewery. So we're just going to go ahead and keep on moving on.
Yeah, like someone we know.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, we might know someone that works at a brewery. Maybe we'll talk about that one of these days. But why don't you start us off with the MMA podcast you recommend people catch this week? Since from what I found, it's been a pretty good week in MMA podcasts. And also we had the week off last week where we just did our shit show of a commentary.
Since I'm a degenerate, I didn't give myself enough time. I don't know. I usually probably average listen about like 10 to 12 podcasts a week when actually trying to lead up to our show. I only listened to about 5 this time because timing was a little odd. But I'll get it started. Level Change podcast, presented by Bloody Elbow, of course, with Mookie Alexander, Steffi Haynes, and Victor. What's his face?
Yeah, Vic Rodriguez.
Vic Rodriguez, that's right.
Or no, wait, it's Eddie Mercado. It's Vic.
They said Victor when they.
Okay. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Vic. I mix those dudes up because I see them all the time on Vivisections together, and then it just fucking, especially the Ryzen ones or the Bellator ones rather, gets chaotic.
So they kind of went and started off with the news of Henry Cejudo recently got surgery because he tore his rotator cuff in the fight against Moraes.
Yep.
So now he's out until 2020, which is great. Great for the sport. Great, especially if you're a double champ.
Yeah. Champ even better if you're Aljamain Sterling right now.
Yeah, or Peter Yan. That interim title fight coming, right?
More like Peter Yan with a W. Am I right? No, I'm totally kidding. Peter Yan's a bad motherfucker. Yeah, they're gonna make a fucking interim belt. I would put money on it. Also,
interim title fight.
What they should have done if Joby Wan wasn't fighting in like a week. Joseph Benavidez is fighting Sunset, right?
Formiga, right?
Formiga, that's what it was. But essentially, that is a number 1 contender fight for flyweight. So what they should have done, I don't think they'll do it because I don't think they have enough time. But that should be an interim belt, and the other one should be an interim belt. Aljo and Yan, and then you have both of them up for grabs. You then have 2 belts in circulation. I don't want this to happen, but this is like bad UFC business decisions in the WME era 101.
It's just another circus.
What are you talking about, circus, Chris? This is a legit sport where people are signed on merit, and the Dana White Tuesday Night Contender Series is built on credible fighters and not terrible fucking decisions made by a bald man.
I'll say this. Dana White is one decision away from turning. Let's just say if the ring girl, which I don't think there's a rule against that, I have no idea. Say that the Octagon girls dated the fighters, which I'm sure happens either way. I have no idea if there's like.
Yeah, there's stories about a certain ranch owning motherfucker.
No, I remember that. Yeah, people. I remember that one. But I'm saying like it wouldn't surprise. Say that was like not allowed. It'd be like, oh, Dana White allowed it. Then we basically have the XFL.
Oh yeah, I mean, yeah. I cannot wait for when I can't remember the name of that dude that had the terrible fucking name of the XFL. Oh God, if I could.
Man or his partner.
No, there was one. You hate me. What the fuck was that guy's name?
Oh.
God damn it. Well, anyway, I'm excited for him to join the UFC.
Or some shit.
Yeah, I'm excited for him to join the UFC here in 2020. So,
that reminded me of that because I was watching some 30 for 30s the other night.
Me too.
I had never watched the XFL one, and man, that's a good one. Very
I should
entertaining.
watch
that. Yeah.
There's a lot of angry Vince McMahon yelling, I'm assuming.
Yeah, this is the XFL.
WrestleMania.
And of course, they have The Rock in their first kickoff game, which is a disaster.
Well, obviously, well-known football player, The Rock.
Yeah, he basically would have been pro if he never got hurt. And It didn't help that he was behind Warren Sapp at the U.
This is not the only time you will hear Warren Sapp's name on this show.
Yeah. So anyways, let's keep going with the Level Change podcast. Interim title fight. That's
actually, you guys already heard a clip of about Warren Sapp earlier that Chris does not even know about. So that's great.
Oh, that's what a fun coincidence.
Yeah.
So then they said, let's think of all the shitty title shot possibilities. They were talking about the UFC's probably going to fuck something up. Like they said, they'll give Dominic Cruz a title shot over Sterling. I don't know. Who knows what they're going to fucking do at this point.
Who knows?
They said the worst case scenario, and I agree, would say if Faber does beat Ricky Simone, which I doubt that, they give him a number one contender fight, or just because he's a name. I don't.
Also, pro tip while you were reading, I realized why my beer was not hazy. It's because I forgot to swirl before pouring, and with hazies, I poured the bottom of this thing into this, and it turned a totally different color. There's some fucking floaters, brah.
That's when like someone who's watching is like, shouldn't have been talking shit.
Yeah, no, 100%. They're like, hey, dumbass. Well, but don't like most of these fucking hazies that are sold or all say drink from the can because they don't want you to see the fucking yeast that didn't flock out.
I know Second Chance, they did a collaboration. I can't remember who the fuck it was with, but it's called Blend-O-Matic, and basically it's a 4-pack. One of them's a hazy, and then one of them's like something else. I can't remember what it is, but you're supposed to put them together. Or I can't remember how the fuck they did it, but you're supposed to pour the two cans in a glass, and I want to try that out.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Anyways, they discussed Loughnane. I forgot his first name. The guy who should have gotten a contract.
Oh, yeah, Loughnane.
Loughnane, yeah, the English fighter who trains out of Alliance here in San Diego. Shouts out. Yep. Didn't get a contract.
And whose coach, Dominic Cruz, yelled for him to shoot for a takedown with about 10 seconds left, and he nailed it.
Yeah, let me just share, of course, Jake, friend of the podcast, he texted me his thoughts. He said, that was the best fight. The reason Dana didn't give the winner a contract was horseshit. I could see why he didn't. The dude that lost was tough as shit, put up a good fight, but he wasn't very good. All I could think of was watching Loughnane. I don't know how the fuck to say this guy's name. Loughnane? I
think it's Loughnane.
Anyways, Jake's saying that he's 100% going to get highlight reel KO'd in the not too distant future. The going for a takedown shit was a bullshit excuse. I just think Loughnane, he thinks she should get a contract, and he said, however, the winner of the main event of that shit almost always gets one because they're always looking for heavyweight cans for Greg Hardy to slap around. Yes, it is.
Well, yeah, the heavyweight was like, obviously they were going to sign the heavyweight. More interesting, I think, is the guy who shot for a takedown and fucking held on to a guy for 2 rounds that no one is addressing. Fucking Puna. Which I think Puna's great, but he slugged it out for about 4 minutes of that fight and then held the dude down for 2 rounds.
Isn't he the guy where Dana's like, oh, is the guy whose name is Puna who fought like a blah, blah, blah.
Oh, yeah, and do you know what his other occupation is?
I don't know anything about the guy. I didn't even think I saw that fight.
He's an assistant for somebody. Do you want to guess who?
No fucking clue.
If I said he was an assistant to a manager, do you want to guess who?
Wait, the fighter is an assistant to a certain manager?
Uh-huh.
Oh, so Mr. Robert Brighton, right?
Oh, yeah, 100%. Weird how that works, that he randomly got a contract, though, even though he and also it was specifically the wrestling that was a problem for Brendan, even though there was a guy that literally wrestle fucked someone.
I just want to just go like this and just quit now while I'm at
it. Also, I've heard some real shit takes this week from a lot of podcasts about like fucking ESPN had like 4 people all doing the same shit take. I'm not going to say which show it was, but you can go ahead and guess because I think they have like 2 fucking shows. They all came on and essentially said, oh, well, you know, Dana White's looking for knockouts. He doesn't want wrestling. Where it's like, number one, has anybody watched any of the other Contender Series fights, especially the Brazil ones, where it's all decisions and they were all very lackluster? Or like a lot of the contracts that were given out were like straight kind of decent decisions for weak divisions. Or has anyone watched the fucking Puna fight where he wrestle fucked a guy for 2 rounds? Like, I get that he slugged it out for 4 minutes, but so did fucking Locknane, and he was actually constantly pushing in that fight. So, I don't know. It drives me fucking nuts.
Yeah, then they discussed Paige Van Zandt had a video release about her recovery since her arm surgery.
Oh God! Also, don't look at her Instagram. It's a fucking.
I saw it.
It started out as a thirst trap. Now it's just a regular trap.
Yeah, I saw it. I mean, maybe I'm probably just desensitized and fucked up already as it is. But
yeah,
it's nasty. But I wasn't like
it's jarring when you're not ready. When you're scrolling through titty pics and then you see that
Mookie said, "Fuck that photo. That grossed me out." And then Victor said, "Oh, I was scrolling through my Instagram." And I saw it real quick and thought it was like a picture of a gutted fish. And then I went back and looked. I was like, "Oh,
yeah."
They says they foresee Paige Van Zandt being cut by Dana at some point. I don't have any comment on that.
So I don't know about cut, but she is trying out free agency after this next fight, which I think you're insane if you don't think Bellator's going to pick her up. Who fights for Bellator, Chris?
As far as markability, you mean?
No, I mean who in Paige Van Zandt's world fights for Bellator?
Oh, her husband or fiance.
Yeah, husband, 100%. So that's By the way, you want to try out free agency? Have be super hot and have your husband at the rival competition. She's gonna make a lot of fucking money either way.
I'll say, what weight class is Valerie Laredo? They'll just have they fight.
Oh my god, she would fucking murder Valerie Laredo. She is. I don't know what she is.
Oh, Van Zandt's a 115er, but is she
25er? I think right now.
Or no, she is a 25er. Yeah. Excuse me. Then they discuss all the Bellator fights, Horiguchi, etc. Talk about motivating Musashi, and like during his interviews, he just like, I don't give a fuck. Let's get this over with. I think it's hilarious. Then they talked quickly about Rory McDonald versus Douglas Lima. That's all I have for that one. It was decent.
Yeah, that show's fun overall.
Yeah, it's always a good listen.
Cool, man. Well, I guess I'll get into one of my catches. I actually have 2 for this week. The first one is The Writer and the Fighter, episode 36, which you heard an intro clip from. Boy, that plane is real loud. So The Writer and the Fighter, actually both my picks for the MMA podcast you should catch this week. They're both shows that I feel like are amazing and no one knows about them. So I highly recommend, if you at all are interested in MMA podcasts, just go and listen to their next episodes because they're both very good. But The Writer and the Fighter, episode 36, hosted by David Golden and Jake Smith. And they open talking a bit about some sponsor drama with David's other podcast. Like, because I guess there's fucking, like always, there's hella drama in the D&D dice community. Like, not dice, like, I mean, like rolling dice. Like those, like game dice. Like 12-sided motherfuckers.
Wait, like he's saying like the Dungeons and Dragons people have problems with each other? Or,
no, like they always have, they just always have drama. No, so they have drama with the dice company that they were sponsored by.
Oh, that sounds like a very. Well, I don't judge people who like that. I don't care.
Oh, you should, because then you listen to the next part and let me know if you judge.
Well, okay, now I do. The fact that they're worried about a fucking die or dice, whatever. That's fucking ridiculous.
Not only are they worried about it, they're worried about it because that company does a lot of limited release stuff. And so people are angry about it because of the FOMO, bro. They're worried they're going to miss out on limited edition stuff, and they feel like it's not a fair business business
How
strategy.
many limited editions of that game are there besides obviously there's a Game of Thrones one, there's probably a Lord
no,
of the
they're talking
Rings one.
about just the dice.
That's what I mean though too. Like I swear there's probably like some bullshit like
also there's entire industries built around limited edition shit. That's how booze works, that's how cigars work, that's how any fucking entertainment
look at like I'm not huge on limited edition shit.
Craft beer, fucking
except for some things, but look at my fucking PlayStation. It's a Spider-Man one. You know, like there you go.
Yeah. Or a fucking PT. How about that?
Yeah, I mean,
that's how it works. Anyway, way off topic, but I thought that was hilarious because goddamn, stuff like that makes me laugh. But they go through and they recap Bellator 222, talk a bit about that and how cool the Bellator Horizon crossovers have been. They also talk about Dennis being a weirdo, like always. Aaron Pico's loss and Heather Hardy's loss, some of that stuff. Rory walking out to Christian Rock, which was hilarious, and I didn't pick up on it because I had it muted.
Oh,
you were watching it at my place.
Oh yeah.
So I guess we just didn't. We were probably talking over the fucking. We watched that right before we recorded a very drunk episode of.
I like that game we played with Karen, where it's like let's try to find the worst possible walkout.
Oh yeah, we found some pretty good ones.
Any sort of metal cover of a pop song. Some bands did it legit. Like August Burns Red they had a good cover of that Children of Bodom, but like shit like that Fred Durst one you played me of was it George Michael? The Fred Durst. Top. Like, is this real? I thought I was getting punked.
Yeah, anytime like Puddle of Mud or fucking Creed or anybody does a cover, that's primo bad walkout music. But back to the writer and the fighter. The other thing that I really, really liked about this podcast is Jake Smith has trained with for a while now and is good friends with Chael Sonnen. And so he was pretty bummed about the retirement and how people were talking about Chael, because Chael's a guy who has helped Jake out a ton, and Jake talks pretty openly about how much Chael's helped him financially and just with training and inviting him into the camp and all that stuff. He also talks about behind the scenes stuff where Chael just has just sent checks to dudes who he heard were having a hard time. I think King Mo actually came out publicly about it at one point that Chael just sent him a check because King Mo was in a tough way. And Chael you rarely hear someone, you hear a lot of stories about Chael being super nice and everybody loving Chael who actually knows him. You rarely hear the people who love Chael talk about Chael, like in person, because they just take it for like, oh yeah, he's Chael. He's a fucking great dude. So it's cool to hear Jake talk about that and talk about how terrible Kevin Iole is and stuff like that. And then they end the episode. So it's all this heartwarming shit. And Jake is like, obviously bummed about Chael retiring. And he talks about how much that dude's done for his career and how dope his career was in retrospect, which it's fucking, that dude fought everybody. But then
just look at his last like 13 opponents.
Yeah. But then they segue straight from that to what you guys heard on the intro, which is they have a regular, like not even a segment, but they've been pitching the idea of a TV show called The Saps, where Warren Sapp and Bob Sapp hang out and just do stuff together, just like as a reality show. And so, And so they went through, they transitioned not like maybe 2 minutes after that, all that heartwarming stuff to, they came up with on the fly an episode of The Saps, which they call the Sticky Situation ? Where Warren walks in on, it's a flashback episode where Warren Sapp walks in on Bob Sapp rubbing one out. And that's what you guys heard on the intro. And that is a great example of how good that show is, because they'll do this like really in-depth, like thoughtful discussions on topics, then like very inside shit too, and then they'll segue to a goofy segment about Warren Sapp walking in on Bob Sapp jerking off in their theoretical TV show where a narrator talks over it, and it's fucking very good. So highly recommend The Writer and the Fighter episode 36, and honestly all their episodes. I'm a big Jake Smith fan. He's also awesome on Twitter. He's hilarious. He's a real personable dude who will talk to everybody, so can't recommend it more. And Dave Golden is also a super sweetheart who I like all of his content. Great writer also at, I believe it's OregonNews.com. The link in the description will go to the David Smith article if you put one up.
Yeah, and that show does sound hilarious. Can't imagine how many instances of them going after hookers and cocaine there would be, but
Oh, you mean the Saps? Yeah.
yeah.
That I
But
believe there's been an episode or two they wrote about that on the fly. So
yeah. Then again, that is a. Never mind. I won't comment on that
yeah,
combination.
probably smart. Probably smart.
Anyways, my second catch is which I haven't listened to in a while, is the MMA Roadshow with John Morgan.
Oh yeah, the one from this week or last week.
I believe it was today or yesterday. He talked about the UFC
221.
Yeah, they're building their brand equity in China, which is very smart with a new, what do they call it, the Apex Performance Institute.
No, so the Apex is the new one in Vegas that took over for the old Tough Gym. The Shanghai PI is, I believe it's in Shanghai, China. They opened a UFC Performance Institute.
Because I saw the video online, and I love how they say, "Oh, we have lots of great local Chinese martial artists," but in the video you see like maybe 1 or 2 Chinese people. It's pretty great.
Well, that's the whole idea behind that too, is they're trying to build up talent.
Yeah, because when you think of China, at least in martial arts, where a lot of it's rooted from, you figure there'd be a lot more Chinese martial artists or mixed martial artists, which is why I think it's a good idea, promotion-wise, that Wei Ling Zhang is getting the title shot against Andrade. I'm not mad at that. I'm not mad at that at all, to be honest.
That was the clearest Endeavor move I've ever fucking seen in scheduling a title fight, where they're like, "Oh, weird coincidence. We're announcing a title fight super quick for this Andrade for Andrade. Also, weird coincidence. It's going to coincide like pretty shortly, and it will also in the meantime we'll get to talk about how we're opening a fucking company that we're going to make a shitload of money on right in that area. And if she wins, oh, maybe that'll help us in that area. Weird coincidence."
John Morgan talks about that. Let's see. He talked about Loughnane not getting the contract. John welcomes Simon Head, is his name, to MMA Junkie. I enjoyed this guy. He had really good coverage of Bellator in London this past week. He discusses the DAZN coverage and its presence in London, and how tape delay is garbage, and why you should have in the back of your mind, what you should never have in the back of your mind. This fight already happened hours ago. Why do I care? Especially when you watch it.
This is exactly why we're not talking about Bellator 223 this week or Bellator London, which are actually technically 2 separate cards, even though they're happening on the same day, just because they're splitting it between fucking. So essentially in the UK, they're splitting it between channels. But over here, they're doing, you can watch the first part on the Bellator app or on Bellator.com. You can watch the last 2 fights on Bellator app or on Bellator.com. And then there's 3 fights in the middle that are on DAZN/Paramount Network that are delayed by like 6 hours or some crazy amount. So it is the worst business model.
All of things, for as much shit Dana may get or Endeavor or whatever, and I like Scott Coker. I feel like he always takes some sort of weird step backwards.
It's not Scott Coker. It's fucking Viacom. Viacom hates sports fans.
They love that statement. Yeah, never mind.
Yeah.
Disregard that.
They love MTV and hate fight fans.
Because Coker is fantastic as far as cross promotion. I wish Dana would have the balls to do that. Because, dude, if you're Dana, you should know that I'd say the majority of the UFC would fuck up the majority of.
At least depends on the division.
I know. It's all style. Trust me, it's all style.
Because like Douglas Lima.
I know. Don't get me wrong. And this isn't me like saying. Yeah, no. This isn't me saying like Bellator's lesser than promotion or product in the UFC. Because Douglas Lima would be very. There's a lot of competitive.
Although Kamaru Usman is a terrible matchup for Douglas Lima.
Yeah. And the thing is too, you could still. There's still means to get past USADA.
Especially in Bellator where there is no USADA. But
or if you're Sean O'Malley, he should have just said he was pulsing.
He is pulsing, bro. They came out and said, "Oh yeah, no."
Oh yeah, but he's just not John Jones. Never mind.
No, they're not gonna move the card for him if that's what you're saying. The card's not going to fucking Arizona.
Yeah, that's just.
Anyway. So do you have anything else on the roadshow?
No, that was about it. He addressed someone, I don't know if it was like a listener, they'd emailed him or tweeted him
Oh,
saying,
fuck
"Hey,
that
John."
guy. Fuck that
And
guy.
they're like, "I love your show, but I think you talk about beer and drinking too much, and I think it's distracting."
It was a review that was left, which, by the way, I'm going to leave a fucking counter review where I'm like, hey, fuck that
And
guy.
I think it's ironic because he gave John a 5-star review, but he just had that little side note.
No, and by the way, that's how you get a fucking comment to a creator. You want to actually let the creator know that you like the show, but also have a critique. You'll leave a 5-star review, be like, hey, I love the show. Here's my critique. Which actually, you know what? That segues all right. Have you listened to our MMA show, OUR, Jimmy Smith's show yet?
Like once. I think that was like 2 weeks ago.
Right. So let me know if you. So Judo Bill, listener of the podcast and longtime homie, had sent me a message. I think it was yesterday or today, saying, "Hey, I have a complaint. I can't tell Jimmy Smith and his co-host apart. They sound way too fucking similar, and it's impossible to tell them apart." Did you catch that while you were listening to it?
Yeah, I did.
Me too.
Another podcast that's kind of like that is TSN with Bronstetter.
Yeah, Bronstetter and Joe Valtellini.
Yeah,
I think honestly, I think the RMMA show problem is worse though, because I don't know it's not Jimmy Smith talking until Jimmy Smith responds, and I'm like, oh my god, everything that was just said was his co-host. So it catches me off guard multiple times every time I've listened. So I thought that was hilarious that he pointed that out. I was like, dude, I totally have had that problem.
Yeah, could you imagine if you or I sounded pretty much just like only like a slight different like octave, whatever, down or up in his
right? Well, luckily you could tell the difference by the slur, but
well, me as well. Sometimes it depends.
Depends on the episode, honestly.
Yeah. But no, that's how it should be. It needs to be balanced with the co-host. You need to be able to actually know who the fuck is speaking.
Right. And I'm sure I'll get more used to it over time. But yeah, I've totally found that exact same thing. I thought it was hilarious. He pointed it out. Anyway, I've got one more catch this week, and two people who do not sound similar, but who I'm big fans of, Coast to Coast Combat Hour, the one after Bellator 222. Of course, hosted by Ed Carbazal and Matt Hawkins from the MMA community, who, Chris, I think you know Matt from, I think he's been in a couple of the Mag War leagues.
Okay.
That we've done. But anyway, they're great guys, and I know them through the MMA community. They also write articles. I think Matt writes, is it Ed or Matt? One of them, I think it's Ed. One of them writes occasionally for Sherdog. And they both write, like they freelance in a bunch of places. And I just thought it was a really good episode for a couple reasons. Number one, Matt Hawkins is the biggest Fedor fan I know of. And of course, Ed opens him up talking about Fedor's quote unquote farewell tour that Scott Coker announced, which we'll see what that actually ends up looking like. But I feel like that kicked Matt off into a super spicy rage for the rest of the episode, which I thought was hilarious. They talk about Bellator 222 and how, like, they also mention how refreshing the crossover stuff between Bellator and Ryzen is, and how the UFC will never do it. They also talk, yeah, it's the worst. It's bad for business, but fucking, there's a certain bald person who can't see past his fucking own nose that has problems with that. They also talk a bit about Chael retiring, and then Matt does maybe my favorite. This was almost one of our clips this week. He does one of my favorite just rundowns on a journalist ever, from a journalist to a journalist. He lights Kevin Iole and Elias Cepeda on fucking fire for putting out garbage articles about Chael retiring and just being awful in general.
That article fucking sucked.
Yeah, well, not only that, but he goes on to call Kevin Iole and Elias Cepeda clear shills for the UFC, and he calls the UG, the underground, he calls it he straight up calls it a shill platform. He says that hopefully soon no one will have to see or hear any content from either one of them. So it's the hardest I've ever heard that dude go, and it was the funniest shit I've ever heard him say. So it was great. He also got super spicy about Paul Malignaggi versus Artem Lobov. Shouts out to the Co-Main Event podcast. I refuse to call him Paulie.
Where's your balls?
I'll piss in your fucking toothless mouth. God damn it. Those fucking quotes are so great.
The guy from Paulie's entourage, he's like, Artem, hold your one finger up, buddy. He's like, that's your wife's favorite.
Fucking so dumb. They're all so dumb. Have you seen the gif of everyone with Paulie chewing gum? It's like six people standing there chewing gum.
That actually exists. And then
it does. It's
there was another interview I saw where Paulie's just the angles like this, and he's just like, yeah, and and he's just like his eyes just like so fucking intense, and everyone's just like, oh, cocaine, Paulie.
By the way, I love the way Paulie's been talking about MMA fans. He's like, they have no fucking respect. They're like fucking pro wrestling fans, because everyone they see lose comes back in a couple weeks. In boxing, people fucking die. I don't know why I keep making him a little more Boston than he is every time, but it's fucking great.
Cocksucker.
Fucking, I love Paulie talking shit about MMA fans. It's my new favorite thing. Also, I'm not going to watch that fight. I don't give a fuck.
You know what? I am watching that fight. I think it's going to be hilarious.
I am not, because I don't fucking care. They're wearing gloves. It's a bare knuckle card, and they're wearing gloves. I refuse to give a fuck.
I think it's going to be fantastic. I don't give a fuck what anyone says.
Fair enough.
It's going to be great because it's just going to be a shit show.
It's in Florida. It has to be.
Yeah, I would hope that like some iguanas run across the ring fighting a raccoon or just some Florida shit happens.
Yeah, they'll have to pause
or someone with an alligator on like a leash or something.
Right. Suntan chicks accidentally having their tit flop out in the background. That kind of Florida shit.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah. All right. Well, on that note, why don't we keep on moving on? And actually, that segues perfectly into Chris. Do you have any MMA podcasts you recommend people skip this week?
Not really, just because I didn't listen to enough to really warrant a skip. I mean, Believe You Me.
Yeah.
Believe You Me was okay. The one from Monday.
Which ironically enough, he talks about San Diego, but all he does is shit on the zoo and say he rode a bike.
Harrington subbed in for Lewis.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.
I don't mind Harrington. It was funny listening to Michael just shit on him for pretty much the whole episode.
Oh, for sure.
Michael gave massive props to Chael Sonnen. Kind of had a big overview of his career. That's not a skip. These are more just mentions.
Yeah. Let's see. So,
what the fuck? Okay, yeah.
So
the rest of these I'll just mention later. Yeah. So
I've got a skip that is going to be a fucking process. So everybody ready themselves, because this is going to be a fucking thing. Oh boy. So I think I mentioned on Twitter, and I mentioned in the description for this video, that we are going to publicly shame a fucking podcast this week, an MMA podcast this week. And I don't know that we've done that. I think we publicly shamed that one dude who was just straight up stealing fucking Street Fight Boncho's Twitter feed. And now there is a show called Action Junkies. This show is hosted by Jake Ellenberger and John Orlando, son of Tony Orlando. And boy, do I have some shit to say. So, Chris, let's start from a relatable place. So normally I give the disclaimer about how if your show's a skip, just because we say it's a skip doesn't mean we hate you or we hate your show. Fuck Jake Ellenberger and John Orlando. We'll start the skip here. Fuck those dudes. Fuck both of them. Yeah. No, seriously. Fuck both of them. They're bad people. And we'll start from there. So have you listened to the podcast Tell 'em Steve, Dave, which is hosted by the guys from the Kevin Smith universe?
No, I have not.
Have you listened to the Naughty Show with Sam Tripoli?
Hold on. The fuck was that? Sorry. I just heard the weirdest possible sound. The Sorry, I just got freaked out. It sounded like some fucking Men in Black alien baby shit is outside just went on.
Yo, it's Jake Ellenberger coming for all of us, yo.
That was just
fucking duck and roll.
What was that sound? That didn't sound like an animal or a human. Okay, sorry. No, I know who Sam Tripoli is. I haven't listened to his podcast.
Have you listened to the podcast What's Good with Freddie Lockhart?
I have not.
Have you listened to the MMA podcast Rootin' and Ronaldo, which used to exist?
I mean, I know those two are great together, but I never listened to their podcast.
You never listened to it, really?
No.
Oh my God, how many times have I talked about that show on here? So anyway, the producer for all of those shows is Vicky Pezza. Vicky Pezza has been in the podcast game for what year is it? Probably, I mean, I would guess close to a decade, if not a decade. The Naughty Show and Tell 'em Steve Dave are two huge podcasts from early on. I love What's Good with Freddie Lockhart and Candace something, comedian in LA. And then Rootin' and Ronaldo is fantastic. You guys have heard Vicky as the super Boston sounding producer for a lot of the episodes. So Vicky produced the Action Junkies podcast, and she put out an episode of her show, which is also coincidentally my can't miss episode for this week. She put out an episode. It's called the Sophomore Podcast, SOPHOMORE, episode 7. And the name of the show is Action Junkies Race Car. So in September 2017, and please go look on our Twitter, TSOV Pod, for if you're looking for more information specifically in a clean thread, or if you want to listen to the entire podcast, of course, link in the description on any of the audio feeds you're listening to this on. But Vicky worked on that show for a while with Lee Syatt, who of course you know from Joey Diaz's podcast, fucking Leland dog.
Lee Syatt, cocksucker.
The fucking flying Jew dog. The fuck cocksucker. So Lee Syatt left the show. Yeah. So Lee Syatt left the show a couple months in after they got dropped by the casino where they were originally recording in, and I forget what other sponsor dropped him, right? So then in September of 2017, they tell Vicky, "Hey, we can't pay you," or maybe I think it was September. They tell her, "Hey, we can't pay you until the beginning of the year because we're waiting for sponsor money to come through and we don't have the money. So either you can stop producing the show, or if you wait till January and keep producing the show, we'll back pay you for all of that." So come January, they don't pay Vicky. She's like, "What the fuck? I can't keep putting out your show because you won't pay me." So they owe her at that point, I think it was $8,000 at that point for producing the podcast for work she already did that they just said they were going to pay her for. So at that point, she starts trying to get them to get paid. They keep putting it off. Jake Ellenberger keeps saying, "After my fight, I'll pay you." Jake Ellenberger loses his fight to, I believe it was Ben Saunders in the first round.
He got kneed or some shit.
Yeah, he got blasted, which, by the way, pretty sure I picked that right. And so as a result, Vicky hits him up. Still don't pay Vicky. They say, "Oh, he lost the fight, can't pay." So then they keep going. They start putting out the podcast with they start taking content that are, well, there's so many fucking things that happen. I'm going to screw up the timeline, so please listen to the podcast or look at her thread because I'm going to fuck the timeline up because there's too much stuff. But everything from them continuing to promise to do it and then not doing it, Jake Ellenberger being sent to her fucking house to collect the recording equipment, which weird move to send a fucking UFC fighter to a chick's house to collect recording equipment. Definitely not intimidation tactics. And also he was like, "Hey, if you put out the rest of the content, I'll give you $2,000 and then after that we can work on paying you back the rest." So she does that. He does pay her $2,000. And then since then she has essentially gotten ghosted consistently. And their excuse over and over again keeps being, oh, we can't afford to pay you. During that time, they also start for stuff that Vicky still, for the same episodes Vicky still hasn't been paid on, they go to a third-party company, start having that company chop up episodes and re-release them. And it's like some production company, but the production company clearly hasn't done any work to the actual episodes. It's just the shit Vicky recorded, and they're putting it out again just in chunks. So like they just hit clip on a fucking episode, which all of this is insane. Meanwhile, she is still being told, oh, we'll pay you. We just don't have the money right now. But they're also simultaneously doing episodes talking about how much they're gambling at casinos. There's clips of during this thing she plays clips of Jake Ellenberger saying that you can't trust people in Southern California and they're not reliable, and that they never do things they're going to say they're going to do. There's clips of the guy John Orlando talking about how he was in the World Series of Poker tournament. He was winning tens of thousands of dollars and continuing to bet tens of thousands of dollars. They also at a certain point get John Orlando's car wrapped with a fucking sticker of the podcast and all of the sponsors for the podcast.
Yeah, fuck these idiots, fuck these clowns. They clearly have a very bad gambling problem. Hence, when someone ever owes you money in life, whether, say, it's $300, right, which is very reasonable to pay someone back within a couple of weeks, depending which, well, it doesn't matter what the fuck. If you have a job, that's pretty easy to pay someone back. If you have a gambling problem, that's going to be the reason why they're not paying you back. I know someone personally that's owed about $300, and the reason why they haven't seen anything is because the person owes them money has a very bad drinking problem. So there's lots of fucking factors. That's a shame that's happening to Vicky.
Well, not only that. So this has been going on since 2017. They still refuse.
That's unacceptable.
How
much money do they owe her?
$6,000.
Come on.
And not only that, they refuse to acknowledge it publicly. I've sent out tweets. Vicky sent out tweets. A bunch of people have sent out tweets asking them, hey, where's your fucking ex-producer's money that you owe them? They don't ever respond. They deleted pictures of the car off some of their social media, but not all of it, because the comments were getting flooded, I would assume. And also, Vicky right now, a lot of the money for that was because she was going to have a foster kid come live with her, which she now has. So all of that money that she already did the work for, that was supposed to go to the foster kids fund, which the state has witnessed to the fact that they haven't paid Vicky, because when you apply for a foster kid for whatever licenses you need with foster organizations, they go through all your financials. So on financials with two separate companies that handle foster care, both of those have had to cite that podcast owes her money, and it's fucking insane.
I hope this is all in writing or some sort of contract is made.
So it was a verbal contract, but verbal contracts are still a thing, and she has hella proof. The problem is the dude John Orlando lives in Vegas, so she has to go to Vegas to small claims court consistently and just invest money in the hopes that if she gets the ruling in her favor, he actually fucking pays anything, which is still, from what she's heard from lawyers, kind of a toss-up. So publicly, fuck Jake Ellenberger and fuck John Orlando. They're bad people, action junkies. JUNKEEZ.
I'm gonna enjoy
the fucking trash ass show.
I'm going to enjoy on our break after the segment watching Jake Ellenberger get knocked out by Wonder Boy, get knocked out by Mike Perry, get knocked out by a lot of people.
Which we've talked positively about Jake Ellenberger on this show. We've talked about his episodes on Joey Diaz's podcast, which, by the way, producer is Lee Syatt. So I bet and I know Lee Syatt, she even mentioned, was trying to tell her to go public about this shit, because she didn't go public with it until September of this year, which was a year after the original, or September of last year, I'm sorry, which was when they originally promised to pay her for doing that work ahead of time. So fuck that show, fuck both those dudes. I don't know if they want to, they should just pay. You're fucking adults. You you hired somebody for a service. They did the service. Not only that, they're very respected in the industry. I consider Vicky one of the best producers around, and she plays clips of the quality of the show and the producing being hot trash nowadays. It's unmissable. Please, if you like MMA podcasts at all, or you at all love a good story about crazy shit going down in the podcasting industry, Sophomore episode 7, Action Junkies Race Car. Holy fucking shit, what an episode. It's like an hour and a half, and it's insane. So I can't recommend her podcast enough, and I can't say fuck you to Action Junkies enough. Fuck those guys.
Yeah, fuck that podcast. It's unfortunate what Ellenberger and that Orlando guy are doing. They're clearly both morons and scumbags that they can't even at least pay.
Just bad people.
Just fucking paying installments, whatever. Yeah. I'm not going to explain it. But also, I have to – I was going to say, before we keep talking about this, I got to do the can't miss because I'm about to piss myself, if I'm honest right now. And I don't want to just try to sugar. So my can't miss was Protect Your Neck with Dan Tom. He did a tour of Dana's new office.
Oh, the one today?
Talked about a giant picture of Connor and Floyd. Dan's pretty mixed on that. He said, yeah, it was
funny fucking you should say that. You know where that giant picture of Connor and Floyd came from?
Where?
It's a $5,000 commission done from Jake Ellenberger and that dude.
Oh.
I swear to God, it's part of the podcast. I'm telling you, listen to this podcast.
Oh, man. Okay. Well, anyways, the fact is, I can't miss is Dan had a really good skit idea based on when he was in his office. He noticed that Dana had a giant bowl of Eclipse gum and like every flavor of Eclipse gum.
Weird.
And he was like, what is this, 2003? And Dana's still blasting like Face the Pain and other shitty new metal bands. And just, I'm not going to do the impression he did of Dana, but it was pretty fucking hilarious. Like he said in his head canon, what he thinks Dana would sound like, oh, I have all the flavors of Eclipse gum, motherfuckers. You know, and like his face, you know, it's you'd have to.
Dan Tom is so goddamn underrated funny. I think it's episode 133.
Yeah, I think anyways, he did a breakdown of the UFC card. I don't really think he mentioned Bellator. He talked about how he loves authentic Italian fighters like Alessio Di Chirico. He has some because he has
Di Chirico.
Yeah, and he's just like, oh, it's like, that's okay, fuck, you know. But he was saying evidently he has some Italian family. Like I think his mom's Italian or some shit. Apparently he has relatives somewhere in Italy. But yeah, he was talking about that. But his whole Dana skit and his just recollection of the office tour was hilarious. And his interaction with other MMA journalists is just pure gold. It's funny. So I hate to fuck off for a second, but I don't want to piss myself live on air right now, so I will be right back.
Go for it. I would definitely make sure you mute your mic, too, before you go.
I'm going to do that right now.
So I already talked about my can't miss. I'll hold off on the new shows until Chris gets back. I'll just rattle off some of the other shows I recommend checking out. Excuse me. Pull No Punches episode 22 was really solid. That's the show hosted by Kajan Johnson and his co-host, Shaq. Boy, barely pulled that one out. The guest was Leslie Smith, who calls in and talk about signing with Bellator, and she mentioned some interesting things during that. She mentioned that Asian promotions didn't want to go anywhere near her because of all the union talk, which I found pretty fascinating. She also mentioned that she doesn't think Bellator is as in violation of union rights as the UFC, since they don't have stuff like uniform rules and USADA and sponsor banners, stuff like that. So pretty interesting. Plus they do cross promotion too. So it's interesting to hear her takes on that. She talks about how the National Labor Relations Board case fell through and how a lot of that seems to be pretty political because of who's in office and how they feel about labor relations, especially with unions or organizations. So thought that was pretty interesting. And then she also talks about she went back to school for sports labor relations, but she's gonna be fighting in Bellator here soon, which I am fucking hyped about. MMA Roasted so Adam Hunter put out an episode that I think he did a while back on his Rockfin feed, but he just put this one out publicly, which is Mayhem Miller and Phil Baroni. Phil Baroni calls in, and then Mayhem Miller calls in from jail, and they're just telling crazy stories about Coleman and Kevin Randleman, and like Phil being shit-faced when he fought Chris Lieben in bare knuckle fighting, and his corner being the person who was giving him shots beforehand. And Phil tries to convince Lieben to do pro wrestling with him, which is fucking hilarious. It's just a crazy fucking episode. I mean, anytime you hear, Phil Baroni is hanging out, and also Chris Lieben is calling in from prison, you know that's going to be a fucked up podcast episode.
Talking about the best ever.
The best ever. New York badass. So yeah, those are a couple of the MMA podcasts I recommend checking out. Let's see. I do have some new shows. Chris, do you have any podcasts you recommend people check out? I mean, the like some regular honorable mention type podcasts.
Oh yeah.
Cool. Why don't you go into those while I go take a piss real quick, because we have been going long on this one.
Heavy Hands was good. Apparently, Connor is a Tyson Fury hater. I don't understand how you can hate on Tyson Fury. I think he's one of the more likable, just fighters in general. Presence, whether boxing or mixed martial arts. I think the guy's hilarious. I think he does well for boxing. That whole, I know this isn't a boxing podcast, but just that whole heavyweight division, I think, has really kind of reignited a lot of people's interest in the sport. So I love Tyson Fury. Don't know what the fuck Connor's smoking. But anyways, they talk about Horiguchi versus Caldwell rematch. By the way, if you haven't seen it, go on Reddit on RMMA. I can't remember which user posted it, but there was a video of Darian Caldwell backstage, just with his team at Alliance, and he's just kind of sulking, just walking towards the camera, talking all sorts of shit like these motherfuckers, etc. Don't know how hard work I put in, blah 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 blah. And he just he starts threatening the cameraman, and he fucking slaps the camera really hard, and just acts like a total asshole. So unfortunately, I'd like to say I used to like Darian Caldwell a lot, and I held him in regard. I thought he was a respectable athlete. I don't know if frustration was getting the best of him or being agitated he lost, but very disappointed to see him act that way. And I hope that was just, I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. I hope that was just kind of, I hope it was reactionary on his part, because that really bummed me out seeing that. Anyways, Phil says that was absolutely the worst bantamweight fight I have ever seen, ever. I feel like it'd be a fun challenge to kind of think of a bantamweight fight I could look up that was worse than that, which I'm sure there is. They think this weekend's matchup is very exciting. They're very, very sarcastic in that. They're not really excited for any of these cards. One card that we said we wouldn't talk about as well included. Then they just kind of broke down the UFC card, and that's it for a mention from them.
Yeah, it was a pretty solid episode overall.
Yeah, I was just saying when you were gone, did you see the video of Darian Caldwell being a complete asshole and slapping the fuck out of the cameraman?
Yeah, but like also that was gotta be a frustrating loss.
Yeah, I was saying to everyone that it's probably reactionary. He was just frustrated, so I'll give him the benefit of the doubt on that one.
100%.
Then You're Welcome with Chael was a short one, but he kind of talked about his career. What I thought was funny is he saw the Eiffel Tower in person in France, said he was not impressed with it. He was more disappointed. He says, I'm actually surprised there's not a Starbucks in there, which that's actually a good point. He says it's just literally a large piece of steel, and it's just boring. He thinks Gegard Mousasi is the most well-rounded fighter in all of Bellator. However, he does like Rafael Lovato Jr.'s chances if he gets top control or just top mount. He talked about Kevin Ioli's article about him. He says everything on it was fine except for the terrible headline. He says I wasn't one of the worst stroke cheats. I was one of the best.
Which
checks
out.
Yeah.
I mean, except he got caught, so it wasn't that good. But he was no Randy. I didn't say that.
And he was good in that. Let's just say there were a lot more substances I could have been caught for, and they didn't detect.
That's fair.
As he was.
That's probably true.
He was disappointed in Luke Thomas saying that Chael was good but never great. Then he said, okay, look at my last 13 opponents I have faced. In hindsight, yes, when he went over to Bellator, a lot of his opponents are out of their prime. I'm not going to take that away.
Yeah, but also look at the last 13 opponents he faced. But look at how he did against those last 13.
Oh, yeah. I will say I disagree with Luke. I think Chael was a very good fighter. I think he was.
He was great. When he was
look
younger,
what he did to Silva in that first fight. That's insane.
Well, and the win over Bisping, like he has some Paulo Filho win, like he has some very credible wins.
Shogun.
That Shogun submission, that guillotine was ridiculous.
Yeah, though Chael was a great fighter. I'd have to disagree with Luke. So yeah, that's my only other kind of shout out, really.
Cool.
Oh, other than that, Submission Radio. I listened to some stuff. I listened to Grange TV, which is fantastic. Robert Wick had really good insight on Horiguchi and Bellator. I listened to him also talk about Bellator and weight class, stuff like that. And then Submission Radio had Israel Adesanya throwing some mad shade towards Bobby Knuckles.
Yeah, episode 189.
Adesanya, I like him, but he kind of came across as like a teenage girl, and just the way he's kind of just ranting.
Yeah,
whatever.
He some of his the stories about Africa were interesting, but they're a little braggy. I like Tai Tuivasa's interview better in that, where he's like,
about Justin Willis.
Yeah, well, he said Justin Willis was talking shit, and then he also said the phrase, I just lost. Contact act like I died. No, perfect. That's exactly what I want from you, Tai Tuivasa. That's a perfect Tai Tuivasa's response. Also, Half-Cast Podcast is supposed to be coming back soon.
Cool.
That'll be dope. Yeah. So I listened to a couple of new shows this week. I'm going to burn through 2 of them, and then I'm going to talk a little bit more about third, because that is almost a catch or can't miss for me this week. Cyborg Nation Station, episode 1. So Cyborg has a podcast. Cyborg's not on the podcast. It's hosted by Ray Elby, her boyfriend, and shit stirrer, and Amy Kaplan, who is a journalist who works for, I think, Fansided. I like Amy. Sometimes Amy is less journalistic than would please me, but I like Amy a lot. I like her Twitter. I think she puts out good content. And the episodes from May 2nd is their first one. They've released 3 episodes so far, I believe. Runtime is around 40 minutes or so. The audio is a little rough and echoey. I think they either left an AC on, or they left a fan on, or maybe they're recording from a laptop with a fan in it, something like that. You can just hear like a little bit of a whine going throughout the entire thing on top of the echo. But of course, since this was recorded a while back, they talked about Greg Hardy being in the UFC, and Ray Elby basically just plays the same character he plays on Twitter and on the UG, where he just is like just being counter argumentative for the sake of being counter argumentative kind of thing. There's some awkward editing, like in some quick cuts. Talk about Rory's draw with Fitch and why he's advancing in the tourney. There's some shilling for Clarissa Shields, since she's friends with Cyborg. Amy at one point does say that she's like, oh, why don't bars just buy a Fire Stick and stream the fights? Because they don't understand how they would make so much money if they did. That's even if you have ESPN Plus, that does not give you a broadcast license for a fucking bar. A
lot of bars generally don't have fights because it entices morons to fight.
Not only that, but also you need to license it. You can't just plug in your fucking regular ass like single person feed at the bar. You have to have a signed deal, which generally means you're paying them a fuckload of money or you're charging per head.
Yeah, like dude, you go to Tap House, great spot to watch fights. You go, technically it's free to watch, but you have to at least pay $20 on your tab, which is easy to do.
Well, that's because they have to pay per the capacity. So they charge per the capacity of the place. So even if you don't fill it, you're still paying for the capacity. So it ends up costing a fuckload of money, which is also why Tap House doesn't show a lot of that stuff anymore. least not for the smaller ones. Or if they might, I don't know. I haven't been Top House in like a month or so. Excuse me, but yeah, it was just, it's one of those things where like, man, you're a journalist. Maybe you should, if I know it, I don't know. But I don't know. It wasn't that bad. I always find Ray Elby to be off-putting, and I find him to constantly make poor decisions about Cyborg's career. So I have a weird bias about it, but I wanted to give it a chance. It's not the worst show. If you like Cyborg and you like Amy Kaplan, you'd totally like the show. I would be interested to see what that show looks like going forward. They haven't done an episode in about 2 or 3 weeks. So I don't know. It's interesting nonetheless. And if they actually get Cyborg on, I think it'd be much more fun. It's weird that it's called Cyborg Nation Station and Cyborg has nothing to do with it. But maybe that's just me. Let's see. Sherdog Off the Chain is a new episode, is a new show. They put out season 1, episode 1. It's hosted by Ant Walker, who I'm a big fan of course, formerly of Sherdog Radio Network with TJ, and who has been doing shows like The Trenches and stuff like that. And he had on with him Ben Duffy, Jay Petrie, and Todd Martin, all from Sherdog. Runtime is around 80 minutes or so, and it's essentially just a debate show, like where Ant will throw out topics like, should we worry about Rory McDonald, or how do you feel about tournaments in modern MMA? Where do you rank Horiguchi as a pound for pound great? And they all kind of go around the horn giving their takes and agreeing or disagreeing and going back and forth. I liked it. I thought it was fun. They had some interesting stuff about their thoughts on Chael and the return of the Contender Series and that kind of stuff. And I think it's a fun format for a show, and especially for their first episode, it worked pretty well. Like, I'm curious to see how different guests changes what that show sounds like. And I'm curious to see how much of it is just going to be Sherdog employees, or even if that, I'm not sure if that's I would assume they're going to rotate out the cast aside from Ant, but I'm not positive. So it'll be interesting to see how that grows going forward. And I enjoyed it for sure.
Thanks, man. Yeah, those are always a good collection of people, regardless.
Yeah.
Whatever.
Yeah, for sure.
So.
Nice. And then the other one I had was this could have been a can't miss for me this week. Honestly, it's so fucking good. Jeff Sherwood on the Between Rounds Patreon has a brand new show called Trivia Battle. And this was Trivia Battle 1. And essentially what this is Sherwood hits up listeners in the Slack chat and puts together a list, or puts together 3 listeners who call in and do a trivia show. And it was fucking,
I like that idea.
It's hilarious. Part of the thing is, though, the people they got on are long time Sherdog Radio Network callers like Zombie Paul and Reese from Minot, and even Joe from Hawaii. These are guys who I've heard talk for fucking. I've heard Zombie Paul make Papa Northcutt cocaine jokes for like 4 years. I feel like, yeah, I've heard Reese from Minot cackle while he's working the oil fields for multiple years now. So, it's part of it might just be that this cast of listeners was really good, but it's just a fantastic show. Jeff Sherwood pulling great questions, like solid trivia questions about like when was Chuck Liddell's first fight? What UFC? Like who was the first middleweight champ? Stuff like that, going all the way back to the golden ages of the UFC, and then even modern stuff as well. And then you throw in a random pop question here and there. Then it had a runtime of around 90 minutes, so they ask a fuckload of questions. And really, who stole the show in this is Zombie Paul, because he's fucking hilarious. He had a lot of jokes about how he was going to slowly start turning into Jordan Breen throughout the episode because he was drinking pretty heavily, which as you guys know, I'm a big fan of that joke. He also said he's like Conor McGregor. He falls apart after 4 minutes because he did real good for the first 4 minutes and then started fucking up.
That's good.
And so Zombie Paul ended up winning. And what I hope they do is I hope they roll Zombie Paul over to the next episode since he won Jeopardy style. And I hope they bring in new people. Number one person I want on that show who's a listener, Brandon from New Jersey. That motherfucker will make them drink it in the whole goddamn episode, and I think it would be hilarious, especially if TJ is forced to sit in. But I can't recommend that show highly enough. The Between Rounds Patreon is amazing. They put out a ton of great content. They also this week put out the Between Rounds roundtable for UFC Greenville, which they had Jeff Sherwood, TJ Santis, and Dean Thomas to break down each of the fights on the card. It's just, I can't recommend Between Rounds Patreon enough, but especially Trivia Battle 1. It's a fucking hilarious episode. I actually plan on listening to it again this weekend because it was so damn funny. So definitely give that a listen.
I'll have to give that a listen for sure. You know me, I love trivia.
Yeah, and it's the most legit trivia show. Like some of it is very personal. Jeff Sherwood asks questions about super random regional California MMA stuff, and then also he'll be like, "Oh, I had this question about this pop star that I don't even know who it is," or like how old was Shania Twain when her first single came out, which by the way was like 13, which is unacceptable. Oh no, it was Leanne Rimes. It was Leanne Rimes.
Okay.
Still unacceptable though. So yeah, that was just really good. Anyway, so some other ones. I'll quickly run down some other podcasts before we go to break here. MMA Roasted also put out this week an episode with Chelsea Chandler, who had the big win in Invicta, and Chris Sunshine Lencioni. Always fuck up Chris's name. Chris Sunshine. You guys know him. He's from the same camp as Chael and Jake Smith.
He sounds like a fellow WAP.
Oh yeah, he very yeah. I believe he is very very Italian. But it was cool hearing them. Protect Your Neck episode 132, the one before the one you talked about, was top 5 heavyweight wars with Zane Simon, which was really good. They recapped 238, and then Zane and Dan Tom give their picks for the top 5 heavyweight wars in MMA, which is a lot of fun.
I imagine Mark Hunt and Bigfoot Silva have to be up there.
Yeah, I'll say they were top 3 on somebody's list for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, that has to be up there. Even after the failed drug test afterwards, it's still so good. Let's see, real quick with Mike Swick, episode 48. Johnny Walker was a guest in studio out at AKA Thailand where he trains.
Mike
that's Swick and his co-host, and it's a really fun episode. Johnny Walker is super fucking personable. His English is a little rough, but he's totally understandable, and he's very he's not nearly as crazy sounding as you think he would be, and he's kind of just a sweetheart. He just keeps talking about how he wants in life to just help people be happy and shit like that. It's actually very cool.
I like that guy's outlook. I like his charisma. I feel like he's always kind of smiling.
Yeah. Well,
yeah,
he's just a super positive dude. Like he's like, I've had fucked up things happen to me, but so has everybody. So like, why bring it up? Why not just talk about good shit? Like even stuff where he's the guy, Mark. I think Mark is the co-host. Asked him. I want to say it's Mark. I hope I'm not fucking that up. I like the guy. But he asked him like, "Oh, do you wish you didn't do the worm after the last fight?" He's like, "No, I'm glad I did because I got hurt doing that rather than during a fucking fight. So that way I actually knew I was injured. I could get it fixed." So that was like a very positive spin on all that. And yeah, dude was just super personable. So give that a listen. Eurobash episode 40. Pizzi and his co-host. I think Niles is co-host. I hope I'm not mixing him up with Severe MMA. Those fucking accents make it tough on me sometimes, man. But they went through and talked a lot about the Bellator London card. They also talked a bit about UFC Greenville. Interview with Rafael Lovato Jr., James Gallagher, and Fabian Edwards, all about their fights. So that was pretty interesting. You talked about Heavy Hands, which was solid. Valley Tudo Hour, episode 18, where Henry Cejudo is super high talking to Renato Larange. He's hilarious. Very high. Probably not as high as he was in the Hot Boxing with Tyson or whatever that show is. But he was very high. His edibles started to kick in, and he's like fucking giggling the whole time. It's not bad. He says Poha like maybe 45 times in that, though. Fucking Henry. And yeah, he talks about growing up in South Central LA, and Hinach just keeps busting his balls. It's pretty good. And then lastly, the only other one I had was MMA Junkie. Dan, Tom, and John Morgan are doing pre-shows for the Contender Series each week. I believe it's MMA Junkie Presents Contender Series pre-show was the name of the first one. But they're going to be doing them each week for the Contender Series, and it's just basically them sitting there for 45 minutes or so before the Contender Series fights start, talking about some of the fights that are coming up. Dan Tom gives breakdowns of it. They talk about kind of the audience and the Apex Center and all that stuff. So I just found it very interesting.
Fuck yeah, dude.
Yeah, so a bunch of good stuff this week. I also listened to like fucking whole bunch of podcasts I'm not even mentioning, but If I Did It, A-Side, Submission Radio, Severe MMA Reporters. Listened to a ton of stuff this week. MMA Ratings is back and their feed's back up to date, so that's good as well. So definitely a big week in MMA podcasts. Dude, so before we go to our break, I do have two quick things, or actually a couple quick things. The Man and the Myth, which is the podcast for The Athletic, which is going to be hosted by not Dan Tom. It's going to be hosted by Chuck Mindenhall and Sean Al-Shadi.
Okay.
That show debuts on July 3rd, which is coming up very shortly, week after next. So that'll be interesting to see. I'm curious to see how that turns out. And then Maori TV, RIP to the podcast Frenemies. Because Maori TV evidently owes Dan Hooker a whole fucking bunch of money.
That's a shame.
Yeah, evidently they had a contract with him for however many episodes, and they were like, "Oh, we're good," halfway through the contract. And he's like, "Nah, motherfuckers, like we had a contract. Like you can stop. We don't have to keep doing the show, but you stop payment for the other half of them, motherfucker." Which also explains why Izzy stopped showing up on that show at a certain point, I bet.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. He does say that he wants to start up a podcast after that gets sorted. So hopefully that happens, because I like hearing Dan Hooker. I think he's a really interesting dude. Then do you have anything well-rounded for this week?
Yeah, your mom's house from like early this week, Monday, was hilarious. Who the fuck was it? Apparently, I will not download the app because it just reminds me of a shitty version of Vine. Don't tell that Christina P. She loves TikTok videos, and people send them to her all the time.
Yeah.
Some of the ones that they listened to were pretty fucking funny, and just the reactions that her and Tom had to him. And what was it? Something to do with they spliced like a quote from Harry Potter, describing some Harry Potter shit, but with the quote of the Scottish actor or Irish actor Brendan Gleeson, great actor from In Bruges, where he's like, "You're a cunt now." He's always been a cunt. The only thing is they're gonna change. Can't even beggar cunt. Have cunt kids. But like they spliced it next to like someone talking about something else. It's just like the greatest fucking segment, and they just couldn't stop laughing. That one was good. Bill Burr is still not over his Bruins losing the Stanley Cup final, but he says, "I'm spoiled." It's like, no shit you are, dude. You're a Boston sports fan. And I remember I saw someone posted they kept the front page from I don't know if it's called the Daily Patriot, like a local newspaper. It showed it's December 2000. It showed like caricatures, right, cartoon drawings of can't remember their names. The head coach of the time of the Celtics, Bill Belichick, who was like a brand new coach for the Patriots at the time. The head coach of the Red Sox, and then the Bruins, and it said Loserville. It's like, oh boy, if they just saw 19 years in the future. Yeah, only 18 titles later. I just thought that was the funniest fucking thing I had seen. So yeah, Bill Burr is definitely spoiled.
Also, shouts out to Brody Stevens. We call this place Loserville.
Yep. Yeah.
Fucking Brody. Oh man. Shouts out to that guy. The only ones I had, Joe Rogan Experience. Joe put out some great episodes this week with like Miss Pat and Duncan Trussell wearing a ghillie suit. And Charlemagne the God. Yeah. Charlemagne the God on with I forget the comic's name, but he was great too. Something's Burning. Holy shit. Brent Chrysler did an episode of Something's Burning with Ari Shaffir and Sean Patton where they make gumbo. It's so good. Let's see. Oh, also I should mention Devolver Digital's E3 press conference was crazy as shit as always. And then I think I mentioned very drunkenly at the end of last week's commentary that Giant Bomb's E3 coverage has been very solid, and you should check that out. Oh, and then I've been watching a lot of Mike Chen's YouTube channel, Strictly Dumpling. It's just him eating fucking, I don't know. He does all kinds of videos. He's done stuff with the Try Guys, if you ever heard of them. He's also done he did a video actually this week with Calvin from Egg Slut for First We Feast Burger Show, which is pretty cool. But anyway, just an interesting like food blogger kind of thing. He just travels around. He'll go to like fucking 7-Elevens in Korea and try the fucking brunch menu at the 7-Eleven. Weird shit like that. But he also is like very, very well versed in Asian food because he's a Chinese dude who comes from that background, and really fun food content. So if you want that, there it is, man. Cool, man. Well, we will go ahead and wrap this segment here, and then we will be back with our breakdown of UFC Greenville, Moicano versus Chan Sung Jung, which I have a feeling is going to be a pretty quick one. I'm not going to lie.
Yeah, all I'll say is I wish Wonder Boy wasn't knocked out because he'd be headlining this card.
He absolutely would be, and you can tell. And I wish John Lineker was still on this card, for fuck's sake.
That too. Yeah.
Oh, all right. Well, we will be back, and we'll see you in a minute, y'all. Oh, in the meantime, listen to this clip of Vicky Pezza describing what pieces of shit Jake Ellenberger and John Orlando are.